If the economy is so good, then why do so many people still feel like everything is falling apart? Well, they feel like everything's falling apart because it is falling apart. That's the real answer. But let's dive into some of the details of this. The first thing is we just have growing economic anxiety despite all the good indicators. Many Americans feel uneasy even though the GDP growth is looking good. And we just covered that because Steve Eisman says it's all fake because it's all based on the AI economy, which 99% of people are not benefiting from right now. And then, of course, everybody's being told one thing. Everybody's being told that unemployment is still historically low and the job market's still relatively strong. Yet, it seems like nobody actually has a good enough job to pay the bills, and a lot more people are not working or have a good enough job to pay the bills than what we're being told. That's called functional unemployment. Plus, the wealthiest 10% of our society is masking how bad the 90%, the bottom 90%, is actually doing right now because they have so much and they can spend so much that it really props things up. The perfect example of this right now can be seen in the U.S. housing market, where median home prices across the United States continue to climb, even though most people cannot afford a home. Well, why is that happening? Because more than 50% of the sales that are taking place are at the highest end of the market, homes that are $500,000 or $700,000 or more. And then you have the layoff fears and job market fragility. Workers that even have a stable job right now and solid incomes are worried about being laid off as companies are freezing hiring altogether and cutting back to only essential employees. And AI and automation is making it easier than ever to do this. And even people who are doing good and are seeing their portfolios rise are a little bit nervous because people recognize that this is not really normal. How much longer can this go on for? When is it going to come to an end? And what's going to happen to my wealth and my portfolio when it inevitably does come to an end? And a lot of job recruiters are also reporting that even experienced workers can't find jobs despite a supposedly strong labor market, which we know the labor market's not strong. That's supposedly the main reason why the Federal Reserve is cutting interest rates right now, even though inflation's still a big problem. And then the signs of a cooling economy are basically everywhere. A recent Moody's survey shows that 64% of Americans expect a recession within the next year, and 22 states are actually already statistically in a recession. That's half the country, guys. And Moody's was the same company that came out recently with a report saying that if California or New York goes into negative territory and they go into a recession, it's going to drag the rest of the country down with them, because those two states are responsible for the highest share of GDP in our nation. And then we have inflation fatigue and declining consumer confidence. Households who are earning six figures and on paper are doing well are saying it's becoming harder and harder to maintain their lifestyle and their standard of living. People are tired of spending just to cover the basics. Many people plan to spend 10% less during this 2025 holiday season, which is actually the lowest optimism going all the way back to 1997, even before the GFC. Also, you have bargain hunting and value shopping on the rise, which signals that people are being more cautious than ever right now with their money, which is a smart thing. I'm glad to at least report that that's happening, because the last thing you want to see is people just kind of throwing in the towel and saying, well, whatever, I'm already not doing good. I might as well just charge the most amount of money up on the credit card and go up to my eyeballs in debt and then just file for bankruptcy. Some people use that as the easy way out, but it's not really the easy way out, because even though they might get away with not paying a lot of that debt back, their financial future is essentially destroyed. And then we have widening inequality in our society. Middle class and lower income families are falling behind despite the good economic data that we keep being forced down our throats. Wages for people who are earning under $60,000 per year are growing slower than people who earn a lot more. And many households now have less in savings than they did prior to the pandemic. And about 25% of households have no emergency savings at all. Zero, nothing. And then there's the emotional impact on everybody from all of this. A lot of people are describing themselves as confused and just waiting to see what happens next. The uncertainty has also caused a trend in the workplace, which is called job hugging, where workers tend to cling to their current jobs out of fear that they won't find another. And really, that's kind of the smart thing to do right now. Even financially stable families are admitting right now that something feels off and they feel like something bad might be around the corner. Now, I know as bad as all of this sounds, the one light at the end of the tunnel is that every economic downturn that we've ever experienced, we've always bounced back from eventually. You know, the Great Depression was definitely the worst. You had the stock market crash in 1929, where it took 25 years for the stock market to get back to where it was prior to the crash. And that was probably the biggest example of this ever happening. Okay, and we might be in for something like that again right now, because there are so many parallels to what's happening today, just like there was in 1929. So there is a possibility that this can last for a very long time. But the point is, eventually we will get out of it, just like we did back then. And the good thing is, it's probably going to take a lot of fiscal responsibility in this country for us to actually get out of it. That's why you're seeing the price of gold explode right now. And I think the US, if they want to have any shot at retaining their global reserve currency status, might be forced back on the gold standard. And if they refuse to go back on the gold standard, well, then the world's going to force them to go back on the gold standard by removing the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. And the smart countries are going to go back on the gold standard on their own. So whether the United States government decides to go back to a gold standard or not, it doesn't matter. It's going to be forced down their throats by the rest of the world. And I almost forgot to mention, I'm walking down Meadow Ridge Drive today in Corte Madera.